I'll be honest with you. Part of me wants to rent in retirement, and it makes absolutely no financial sense. None. I already own my place, no mortgage, just a maintenance fee. From a numbers standpoint, I should stay right where I am. But that doesn't stop me from thinking about it because what I want and what actually makes sense aren't the same thing. And I've realized something lately. Retirement decisions aren't just about money. They're about how you want to live. And sometimes those two things don't line up. And real quick, before we get into this, if you're trying to figure out retirement in a real, honest way, not the polished version, the real version, go ahead and hit subscribe. That's what this channel is all about. So let me start with the want side of this, because this is the part people don't always say out loud. There's something about renting that just feels lighter. No responsibility, no long-term attachment. If something breaks, not your problem. If the neighbors are loud, you can leave when your lease is up. There's a freedom in that, a flexibility. And I think when you retire, that feeling becomes even stronger. Because for the first time in your life, you're not tied to a job. You're not tied to a schedule. You're not tied to a location. So the idea of being tied to a property starts to feel a little heavier than it used to. At least it does for me. There's also that travel mindset that creeps in. You start thinking, what if I just packed up and lived somewhere else for a while? What if I tried a different city for a few months? What if I didn't have to come back to the same place every time? And renting kind of fits that lifestyle. It feels like it matches the idea of freedom that retirement is supposed to bring. And I'll be honest, that's appealing, really appealing. But then there's the reality. And the reality doesn't care about feelings. The reality is, I already own my condo. It's paid for. There's no mortgage hanging over me every month. That alone is a big deal in retirement. Because when your income is mostly fixed, predictability matters. Knowing your biggest expense is already taken care of, that gives you peace, real peace. And renting, that's just the opposite of that. Rent goes up, leases change. You're always one renewal away from a higher payment. And in retirement, that kind of uncertainty matters more than it used to. Because you're not just working harder to make up the difference anymore. You're living off what you've got. So financially, staying put makes all the sense in the world. Low housing cost, no major debt, predictable expenses. That's exactly what most people aim for in retirement. And here I am, already there. There's also something else that's been in the back of my mind. All the advice you hear out there, YouTube articles, financial channels, you'll hear people say all the time, renting is better. Don't tie your money up in a home. Let someone else handle the maintenance. And I get it. I really do. Because if you've got a big house, a lot of upkeep, repairs, yard work, things breaking all the time, yeah, that can get expensive. And in some cases, it might actually cost more than renting. So I understand where that advice comes from. But here's the part they don't always say. A lot of the people giving that advice are in a completely different situation. They've got money, a lot more flexibility. So when they say just rent, they're not worried about the rent going up. They're not worried about long-term stability because the rent isn't a big deal to them. And that's fine, but that's not my situation. And it's probably not yours either. For me, owning this place outright means I don't have a big monthly payment hanging over my head. It means I've got a level of security that renting just doesn't give me. So when I hear that advice, I don't ignore it, but I also don't blindly follow it. because what works for someone else, especially someone in a completely different financial position, doesn't always work for me. So now you've got these two sides, what I want and what makes sense. And this is where it gets interesting, because this is the part nobody really talks about. That tension in the middle. On one hand, I've got financial security. On the other hand, I've got this feeling that I'm a little bit stuck. And I don't mean stuck in a bad way. I mean settled. And sometimes settled feels a lot like stuck, especially when your environment isn't exactly what you want it to be. I've talked before about where I live, the noise, the area not being as nice as it used to be. It's not terrible, but it's not ideal either. And when you're home a lot, more in retirement, those little things don't feel so little anymore. They start to matter a lot. So now you've got this trade-off. Stay where you are and have financial peace, or make a move and maybe feel more free, more comfortable, more aligned with how you want to live, but pay for it every single month. And that's the part that keeps me right in the middle, because neither option is perfect. And here's something I've been thinking about, and this might be the middle ground. Instead of changing where I live full time, what if I change where I spend my time? What if I keep the financial stability, but build in periods of freedom? Travel, not permanent, not selling everything and starting over, but intentional time away. A week here, a couple of weeks there, maybe even a month somewhere different. Just enough to break that feeling of being stuck without blowing up what's already working financially. Because when I really think about it, what I'm chasing isn't necessarily renting. It's the feeling I think renting would give me: freedom and change in a different environment. And maybe I don't need to give up what I have to get some of that. Maybe I just need to step away from it once in a while. And that's a whole different way of looking at it, because now it's not an all or nothing decision. It's not stay forever or leave completely. It's stay smart, but I've lived a little more freely within that. And that feels a lot more realistic, at least for me. So where have I landed with all of this? For now, I'm staying. Not because it's exciting, not because it's perfect, because it makes sense. It gives me stability. It keeps my expenses low. It takes pressure off the rest of my finances. And at this stage, that matters a lot. But I'm also not ignoring that other side anymore, the part of me that wants something different. I'm just finding a way to meet it halfway, through travel, through changing my environment without changing my foundation. Because I think that's the real lesson in all of this. Not everything in retirement has a clean answer. It's not always about maximizing every dollar. Sometimes it's about how you want your day and life to feel. And sometimes those two things are in conflict, just like this. So if you've ever felt like your part of you wants one thing, but the numbers are telling you something else, you're not alone. I'm right there with you, trying to figure it out, one decision at a time. And if you enjoy this kind of real, honest conversation about retirement, make sure you're subscribed. And if you want to go a step further, I've got a coffee club link below. That's just a way to support the channel, and I share what I learned along the way. That's where I am for now. Thank you for watching.